The night a riding shades of copper over old Avenida Soul. Street cafes stayed open longer, like nobody wanted to go home. People moved in quiet motion, coffee cups and neon glow. And somewhere through the evening traffic, music started moving slow. I arrived with my old guitar and wrote still in my hands, another wandering desperado without a map or future plans. Then the tenor sax broke through the silence, warm as summer after rain. And every phrase across the rooftops sounded strangely like my name. I've crossed too many borders, watched too many mornings fade, but certain melodies appear and quietly rearrange. When the saxophone found my name, everything changed in the light. Every old goodbye grew smaller, every memory felt right. When the saxophone found my name and the city turned to gold for one impossible evening, I forgot to feel alone. Stay a little longer before the rhythm disappears. You stood beside the terrace rail, watching reflections on the bay, listening like every small silence had something left to say. You asked me, do musicians ever stop moving? I smiled and said, they called it rest. You laughed softly, no, I mean inside. The guitar answered before I could. The bass moved low and patient, the brushes painted air. The sax climbed over every rooftop and left old thoughts somewhere. For a moment all my old destinations turned weightless in my mind, like roads becoming photographs of places left behind. Maybe freedom isn't distance, maybe freedom finally comes when you stop searching. When the saxophone found my name, everything changed in the light. Every old goodbye grew smaller, every memory felt right. When the saxophone found my name and the city turned to gold for one impossible evening, I forgot to feel alone. Stay a little longer before the rhythm disappears. Tenor sax sings in long breathy phrases, guitar responds with fingerstyle melodies. Bass and brushes continue moving like moonlight crossing among the sea. You asked if this night became a memory. I looked around, the empty glasses, the lanterns, the warm air, then answered, I hope it becomes a song. Because songs don't leave, people do. When the saxophone found my name, it left echoes in my soul, like moonlight caught inside a window, making restless spirits whole. When the saxophone found my name, if these roads circle again, leave one light beside the harbor, and I'll remember then. When the final chord grows silent and the stars fade into blue, I'll still hear the saxophone leading me to you. The city slow beneath the moonlight, like it forgot the hour again. Cafe lights spilled across the sidewalks and painted stories in the rain. Small conversations filled the evening, coffee cooled beside old books. Every passing face seemed softer than the memory it took. Carrying my guitar and roads tied into every chord. Another wandering desperado, still making peace with being ignored. Then a flute crossed through the open air, like a message without a name. And suddenly every familiar street did not feel the same. I followed coastlines, I've trusted movement, I've learned how not to stay. But certain nights arrive quietly and take the map away. The last cafe before morning, where the city breathed in blue. Every chord became a memory, every melody became you. The last cafe before morning, where the night refused to end. And for one impossible evening, I forgot where I had been. Stay a little longer before the daylight comes. You sat beside the empty chair, like you had always been there, listening without interruption, like silence was something to share. You asked me, do songs ever finish? I smiled, only the recording. You laughed and shook your head, then quietly said, good answer. The electric guitar moved slowly, warm notes against the night. The flute painted little circles just outside the light. The bass held every heartbeat, the brushes carried time, and somehow all my old directions no longer felt like mine. Maybe every restless traveler eventually discovers became a memory, every melody became you. The last cafe before morning, where the night refused to end. And for one impossible evening, I forgot where I had been. Stay a little longer before the daylight comes. What happens when tonight becomes yesterday? I looked outside the quiet street, the fading lights, the sky becoming pale. Then answered, if we're lucky, it becomes a song. Because songs know how to stay. The last cafe before morning, still glowing in my soul, like reflections crossing water, making broken stories whole. The last cafe before morning, if these roads return someday, leave one table by the window, and I'll remember the way when the final note falls softly and the stars fade out of view. I'll still hear the flute leading me to you. The city lost its colors, but the night stayed true. And somewhere in that last cafe, I left this song with you. I left this song with you. The avenue turned silver slowly as daylight disappeared. Street cafes stayed half awake, like they wanted night to linger here. The air was warm with conversation, soft laughter and passing wine. Old lanterns lit the sidewalks like stars standing in line. I arrived carrying my guitar and songs without a place. Another wandering desperado, still moving at yesterday's pace. Then through the quiet city motion, a saxophone crossed the air. Somehow every note it played felt like it had found me there. I've counted miles, I've counted sunsets, I've counted nights alone, but music keeps reminding me no road belongs forever. Moonlit Avenida serenade under skies of velvet. beneath the balcony, watching shadows touch the sea, listening like every silence had something hidden underneath. You asked me, do you remember every city? I smiled, no. Then after thinking only the songs, you looked away and softly said, then write one for tonight. The guitar stayed close and steady, the bass moved like the tide. The sax climbed into moonlight and left old thoughts behind. The brushes painted gentle circles, the triangle caught the glow, and suddenly all my old destinations didn't matter anymore. Maybe every restless traveler eventually discovers home doesn't always wait. Sometimes it appears. Moonlit Avenida serenade under skies of velvet blue. Every rhythm became softer, every melody became you. Moonlit Avenida serenade, where the evening moves so slow, and for one impossible moment I forgot I had to go. Stay right here until the stars grow tired. You asked if tomorrow changes everything. I looked at the empty glasses, the quiet street, the moon above us, and answered, then tonight was worth it. Because not every beautiful thing needs forever. Some only need one perfect evening. Moonlit Avenida serenade, still glowing in my mind, like reflections crossing water. The years could never hide. Moonlit Avenida serenade. If these roads return again, leave one light beside the window, and I'll remember then. When the final note disappears and the afternoon faded slowly into a sky of honey and blue. Old balconies caught the sunlight like they already knew. The cafes filled with quiet music and stories left unfinished. People stayed for one more moment, like evening was a wish. I arrived carrying my guitar and cities inside my shoes. Another wandering desperado, still collecting different views. Then the flute rose above the avenue like something weightless and true. And suddenly every passing shadow turned into something new. I've trusted roads, I've trusted movement. I've learned to travel light. But some evenings don't ask permission, they simply arrive. Golden hour never ends when the music moves this way. Every chord became softer, every memory chose to stay. Golden hour never ends where the warm light touched the sea. And for one impossible evening, the whole world waited for me. Stay a little longer until the colors fade. You sat beneath the hanging lanterns, watching reflections bend, listening like every silence had somewhere left to end. You asked me, do musicians ever stop looking for something? I smiled.
We call it performing.
You laughed. No, I mean for real. The electric guitar answered first. Small notes, long pauses, no defense. The flute moved higher above us. The bass stayed warm and low. Brushes painted through the evening. And somehow every old ambition felt smaller than before, like roads becoming photographed and nothing more. Maybe freedom isn't distance. Maybe freedom is finding one evening that doesn't rush you. Golden hour never ends when the music moves this way. Every chord became softer, every memory chose to stay. Golden hour never ends where the warm light touched the sea. And for one impossible evening, the whole world waited for me. Stay a little longer until the colors fade. Electric guitar sings in warm jazz phrases. Flute answers with floating melodic lines. Bass and brushes continue the gentle motion like sunlight crossing water. You asked,
If tonight became a song, would people understand it?
I looked around.
The tables, the sky,
The slow wind,
then answer.
they don't have to. Some songs
Only exist to remember a feeling.
reflections over water, making restless stories whole. Golden hour never ends. If these roads return someday, leave one light beside the window, and I'll remember the way. When the final note grows distant and the sky turns silver blue, I'll still hear the flute
carrying me to you.
The city turned to moving colors, gold and silver in the rain. Street cafes and open windows, singing softly through the lane. Evening gathered without hurry, like the world forgot the hour. And every corner held a feeling, small and temporary as flowers. I arrived with my old guitar and roads inside my hands. Another drifting desperado who never stayed long enough to understand. Then a flute crossed through the skyline, weightless as a falling dream, and every note became a doorway to somewhere in between. I followed coastlines, I followed seasons, I've trusted places I could leave. But certain songs arrive unnoticed and make you believe. Feathers in the midnight wind, floating through the city lights. Every melody moves slowly, turning darkness into white. Feathers in the midnight wind, where the warm air touched the sea. And for one impossible evening, the whole world waited for me. Stay right here until the stars grow quiet. We stood beneath the faded awning, watching shadows move below, listening with the kind of silence that only old souls know. You asked me, do musicians ever arrive anywhere? I laughed, usually just in time to leave again. You smiled and quietly answered, that sounds lonely. The guitar kept answering softly, the flute drifted overhead. The bass walked through forgotten moments like things left unsaid. Brushes painted little circles, the rim shots mark the night. And somehow all my old directions stopped feeling right. Maybe every wandering heart eventually learns not every beautiful thing needs to be owned. Feathers in the midnight wind, floating through the city lights. Every melody moves slowly, turning darkness into white. Feathers in the midnight wind, where the warm air touched the sea. And for one impossible evening, the whole world waited for me. the stars grow quiet. You asked if this night disappeared tomorrow. I looked around the cafes, the lanterns, the soft air, then answered, it already survived. Because once music happens, it never fully leaves. Feathers in the midnight wind, still moving through my soul, like reflections crossing water, making restless stories whole. Feathers in the midnight wind, if these roads return someday, leave one table by the window and I'll remember the way. When the final note grows distant and the moon slips out of view, I'll still hear that flute leading me to you. The city lost its colors, but the night stayed true. And somewhere in the midnight wind, I left this song with you. I left this song with you. Evening arrived without warning, painting gold across the river bend. The city opened all its windows like it expected old friends again. Street lights stretched along the water, reflections moving with the tide. People talked in soft conversations and left their worries outside. I arrived carrying my old guitar and songs worn smooth by years. Another wandering desperado learning to disappear. Then the flute rose over the rooftops, light and impossible to hold. And suddenly the moving city started feeling less alone. I've trusted trains, I've trusted seasons, I've trusted roads with borrowed names. But some melodies appear quietly and never leave again. Lanterns floating to Rio Azul, drifting softly through the night. Every chord became a postcard, every shadow turned to light. Lanterns floating to Rio Azul, where the river carried through. And for one impossible evening, every song returned to you. Stay right here before the stars grow thin. You sat beside the river railing, watching reflections lose their shape, listening like the smallest moments were the only things worth saving. You asked me, do travelers ever stop looking back? I smiled, only when they finally look around. The guitar answered in soft colors, the flute climbed through the evening sky. The bass kept holding every heartbeat, like it already knew why. Brushes painted moving circles, the rim shots counted passing time. And somehow all my old directions stopped feeling entirely mine. Maybe freedom azul, drifting softly through the night. Every chord became a postcard, every shadow turned to light. Lanterns floating to Rio Azul, where the river carried through. And for one impossible evening, every song returned to you. Stay right here before the stars grow thin. This evening becomes memory, what remains? I looked at the lanterns, the river, the quiet tables, then answered the parts we keep singing, because places fade, but songs remember. Lanterns floating to Rio Azul, still shining in my soul, like moonlight crossing calm water, making restless stories whole. Lanterns floating to Rio Azul, if these roads return someday, leave one light beside the river, and I'll remember the way. When the final note falls softly and the night turns silver blue, I'll still hear the flute carrying me to you. Ooh, carrying me to you. The river kept on moving, but the night stayed true. And somewhere beyond the lanterns, I left this song with you. I left this song with you. Rua do Sol was dressed in amber, soft reflections on the street. The cafe's open to the evening and invited passing dreams to speak. People laughed without direction, wine glasses caught the light, like nobody had plans tomorrow, only this one perfect night. I arrived carrying my old guitar and years I never named, another drifting desperado who never stayed too long in one place. Then somewhere through the city colors, between warm lamps and quiet skies, a melody crossed from the distance and met me in your eyes. I followed roads that promised freedom, I followed stars that disappeared, but some moments don't ask permission, they simply stay. Velvet evenings on Rua do Sol, where the world moves soft and slow. Every rhythm became lighter, every shadow let me go. Velvet evenings on Rua do Sol, where the night turned golden blue. And for one impossible evening, every song became about you. Stay a little longer before the lights grow dim. You sat beside the open window, listening more speaking back like you already knew the language of people carrying old maps. You ask me, do musicians ever get tired of saying goodbye? I looked at my guitar, then smiled, only when someone makes them stay. The roads floated through the silence, the electric guitar climbed above. The bass carried every heartbeat like it understood love. The shaker held the city together, the rim shot marked the passing time. And suddenly all my old directions stopped feeling like mine. Maybe every wandering heart eventually learns not every destination needs a distance. Velvet evenings on Rua du Sol, where the world moves soft and slow. Every rhythm became lighter, every shadow let me go. Velvet evenings on Rua du Sol, where the night turned gold and blue. And for one impossible evening, every song became about you. Stay a little longer before the lights grow dim. Will you remember this? I looked outside, streetlights, quiet tables, the last warm breeze. Then answered, I remember songs, and this feels like one. Because some evenings don't become memories, they become places inside you. Velvet evenings on Rua du Sol, still glowing in my soul, like city lights on calm water, making restless stories whole. Velvet evenings on Rua du Sol, if these roads return someday, leave one chair beside the window and I'll find my way. When the final chord fades slowly and the stars fall out of view, I'll still hear this evening leading me to you. The city turned to silence, but the night stayed true. And somewhere on Rua du Sol, I left this song with you. I left this song with you. The harbor wore its evening colors, blue and amber on the sea. Old cafes stayed awake for dreamers and people trying not to leave. I came carrying my old guitar and roads inside my shoes. Another wandering desperado with nothing left to prove. The wind moved through the narrow alleys like stories passing by. Then somewhere through the fading daylight, a saxophone climbed the sky. It played a line so slow and golden, like summer after rain. returned a feeling I thought I'd lost again. I've chased horizons endlessly, watched cities disappear, but certain songs arrive unnoticed and stay for years. Postcards from the blue harbor, floating somewhere in the tide. Every chord became a memory I could never leave behind. Postcards from the blue harbor, where the night moves slow and true. And for one impossible evening, every road led me to you. Stay a little longer before the moon lets go. You sat beside the open window, watching lights reflect below, listening like every silence was something beautiful to know. You asked me, do songs remember people? I smiled and answered, better than people remember songs. You laughed quietly, then said, that sounds sad. The guitar answered softly, the sax breathed through the room. The bass walked into hidden places like flowers learning bloom. Every brush upon the snare made the evening feel alive, and suddenly all my old directions no longer felt like mine. Maybe every wandering heart eventually understands. Home doesn't always look familiar. Sometimes it sounds familiar. Postcards from the blue harbor, floating somewhere in the tide. Every chord became a memory I could never leave behind. Postcards from the blue harbor, where the night moves slow and true. And for one impossible evening, every road led me to you. Stay a little longer before the moon lets go. Tomorrow calls you away. I looked at my old guitar, the harbor lights, the empty glasses, the sea. Then quietly said, tomorrow can wait, because some nights don't belong to time. They belong to music. Postcards from the blue harbor, still shining in my soul, like reflections crossing water, making broken stories whole. Postcards from the blue harbor, if these roads return someday, leave one chair beside the shoreline, and I'll find my way when the final sax grows silent and the stars disappear from view. I'll still hear this evening calling me to you. Brushes fade into silence. The harbor kept its secrets, the moon stayed blue. And somewhere in that quiet evening, I left this song with you. I left this song